I have always considered myself a very lucky person. I was born in a loving family. I got great education. I met a lovely woman who became my wife, and we have 2 good kids. I have many passions in my life, one of them being triathlon. And also for the past 15 years, I've had a very successful career with 2 interesting companies. So really, as I look at my life, I shouldn't complain. Yet, some time ago, I started feeling anxious. I started feeling some pain. I observed that my life was becoming very predictable and routine and very complex. My head was just full of thoughts, thousands of thoughts. I would think about the money, about career, about other people's opinions. It was so hectic. And also, I was becoming the master of multitasking. And worst of all, I was rushing all the time. It didn't matter what day of the week it was, whether I was at work or during the weekend, whether we were on vacation. I was in a hurry. And my whole family was in a hurry as well. We were just rushing everywhere, to church, to school, everywhere. As I looked around me and I saw a lot of successful people, I could tell on their faces that they were struggling also with this dilemma, what I would later call delaying better life for later. So whenever I ask this question myself, am I living my best life? The answer would be, most of the time, no. And looking around, it felt almost like a taboo to discuss it with other people because this pressure of success, wearing a mask of success, was so strong. So everything was great. But luckily for me, I've always had a great talking partner in my wife. And she shared a lot of my concerns and my thoughts. So one day, we have a conversation, and we feel this calling in our heart that there's time to do something about our life. So we decided to have a break, time out from our life for 1 year. And we decided to take a sabbatical, so-called sabbatical. One day in September 2010, I come back from work. We have dinner together with children, and we have a conversation. And a very short discussion leads to a family decision that we are going away for 1 year. We are leaving everything, work, school. We are going to travel for 1 year around the world. It was really amazing how easy it was for us to make this decision. Now, when we broke the news to our family, friends, colleagues, there were very mixed reactions. Mostly positive, but very mixed. So they ranged from, "Oh my goodness, you're my hero. I always dreamed of doing that. Good for you. I wish I could go with you." But there were also comments, very negative comments. "What are you doing? You're going to ruin your successful career. Have you thought about it well? What about your kids? It's impossible to take them out of school in mid-year." It was in October. So despite all those mixed reactions and the passage of time from the decision, our internal conviction that we need a sabbatical was very strong. And in fact, it's been my experience that whenever I follow my heart, it feels like the whole universe is very cooperating. So after 4 months of very hectic preparations at work, at school, a lot of admin stuff when you leave your house behind, there's a lot of little things to be done. We finally left Poland for our first country of Costa Rica. And going on this year-long trip, we had certain thoughts, but most of all, our determination was not to overcomplicate it. We got ourselves an open round-the-world ticket that we could change the dates for 365 days. And we couldn't change the airport, so we just pinpointed certain locations on 4 continents that we needed an airplane to go to. But everything else was just open. We only had accommodation for the first 3 nights. And we just assumed we would figure everything else out along the way. Obviously, traveling for 1 year, budget is tight. So we had a certain daily quota that we were disciplined to maintain. And related with that, since we were moving most of the time, we needed small luggage. And in fact, the luggage we managed to have for this trip was the smallest luggage we've ever had on any trip. And we were going away for 1 year. We also were committed to homeschool our kids. Even though with my wife we could take a break from work, our children couldn't really have a break from education. So luckily for me, my wife undertook this task of homeschooling our kids with my little support. And I put a new task on myself. I set up a blog, our family blog. Initially, we just assumed this would be for our friends and family, just to keep track of where we are and to share stories. But over time, to our surprise, the daily readership was quite big, a couple of hundred people every day reading our stories. Also, one of the 12 months of our travels, we decided to dedicate to volunteering. We've always felt blessed in our lives, so we wanted to give back to the local communities. And this was in Honduras. My wife and my daughter, who's 7, she was 7 at that time, they worked in a kinder, and together with my son, who was 9, we worked in an English school for 1 month. And last but not least, we also were determined to avoid tourist places along the way, for 2 reasons. The first one, very economic. We couldn't afford staying in a hotel. And secondly, we've learned that life is so much more interesting when you travel off the beaten track. So 2 weeks ago, after 12 months of traveling, covering 90,000 kilometers and having visited 13 countries in 4 distinct regions, Central America, North America, Australia and Oceania, and Southeast Asia, we came back home. As I look back on this 12 months, I view it very much as a great gift, as a great treasure we went to discover. One day, I think it was about a month into our sabbatical, we were in Nicaragua. My wife comes to me and says, "You know, I have this odd feeling. I feel like I'm starting to live my own life. Maybe for the first time in my life ever." And I say, "I have the same." And we started noticing that instead of starting our day in a typical manner of going through our mental to-do list, what have I told myself to do today? We are more and more starting our days by just asking ourselves, what's giving me joy? Where do I feel good? And then we follow those things. Obviously, there is homeschooling, which is the discipline, but the rest is really a big unknown. And we also get a lot of inspiration by watching our children, whom we found to be the masters of living their own life. It also felt like we switched off our autopilot, finally, in our life. That we stopped cruising. We started controlling where we were going. And since our days were so unpredictable, starting with food, accommodation, etc., it brought so much excitement to our life. And we felt like a tree that doesn't know where it's growing next. About a couple of months later, I also started having some personal aha moments about my life. The first was this illusion I created in my head, being around successful and wealthy people, that more wealth leads to more happiness. Well, having spent 3 months in Central America and a month in Fiji, these were the places where we've seen a lot of happy people. In fact, the richer the country, the less happy the people were. That was almost a given. And it was such a big realization for us. Then I also noticed something, a very personal illusion I created about myself. Those who know me would often hear before sabbatical, I was declaring in public and at every occasion that I was a family man, that family was #1 priority. And I had to go on a sabbatical for 1 year to realize I was cheating myself. It was just bullshitting myself. Sorry about my French. And my wife obviously helped me to realize this as well. Before, I wasn't spending any time with my family. I had my family on my mind, but I wasn't really dedicated to it. But yet I would declare that it was my #1 priority. And also, a personal observation was that whenever we declare something in public, usually we are not. And the reverse is true. At least it was true for me with this family guy picture of myself. But finally, during our sabbatical, I could look in the mirror honestly and say, yes, now you're a family guy. You spend 365 days, 24/7 with your family, in a tent, in a small room, wherever. We were just through thick and thin. The third illusion I noticed I created over the years was about personal development. I strongly believed that the best place for growth, personal growth, is on the job or for our children at school. And as I look back at this year, I cannot recall from our life a more self-developmental year for all 4 of us in many ways, also in creativity. When you live on a limited budget, your creative juices just get flowing every day. And our self-development was in such a wide spectrum. It was from mundane things like cooking or blogging, homeschooling, to very more profound things like self-awareness, spiritual. So everywhere we looked, we felt we were self-developing in a big way. Another thing that we noticed being away from home, from our families and friends, was also the quality of the relationships we have built with other people. And the best metaphor I heard on that was from my wife. It felt like cooking pasta. When you want to test whether pasta is ready, you just throw it against the wall. And the same was true with our relationships. Those that were strong, they just stuck to the wall, and those that were weak simply fell off. They disappeared. Certain people disappeared from our life for 1 year. Also, thanks to traveling and thanks to blogging, we made so many new friends. So, concluding, I'd like to say that many of us rush through life. From the early beginnings, we try to please our parents, our teachers, our employers, our spouses, our children. But somehow along the way, we often lose track of our own life. Therefore, I want to appeal to you all. Live your own life, because we will all die our own death. But before that, please take a sabbatical. Thank you very much.